Glenn. I'm the president of LiftPort Group, and I'm so happy to have you all here tonight. We're going to have a pretty busy schedule for the evening. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff we haven't talked about before. Uh, um, a little bit about some of the revenues that we're developing, some of our key partners and alliances that we're creating. Sorry, I'm going to bore people with law and policy, but law and policy is pretty darn important. So, stick with me on that. And at the end of the show, end of the evening, we're going to have a fairly big announcement that we hope people will stick around for. So, trying to stick with our schedule. I'm going to go ahead and bring Sean on. Wes, glad you're here. Appreciate it as a contractor. And let's, Joe Luttrell, you're on towards the end of the show. So if you want to come on camera, you can. Just say so and we'll bring you on. Otherwise, we'll leave you off until towards the end of the show. But your call, however you want to do it. Sean, go ahead. Give a little bit about your background, who you are, your role here, and what you're working on.
Okay. Well, my name is Sean Key. My background, I'm native Floridian. I guess I did 8 years in the United States Army, mainly in the infantry and in deep behind the lines in intelligence gathering, human intelligence gathering. I was deployed to Bosnia, been to airborne school. I went through commando schools and ranger schools and long-range reconnaissance. And my biggest claim to fame is while I was in Berlin when the wall came down. Wasn't my fault, but I was there.
It wasn't your fault.
Got out, worked in pretty much logistics. Once I got out, I was working at Ag Air. I guess it's my other claim of fame is that when I was working at Ag Air, I was running a crew. We supervised helicopters fertilizing pine forests for private paper companies like Weyerhaeuser, International Paper, and those big paper companies. And my aircraft was the only commercial aircraft flying all day long, because I was in the woods and nobody could get a hold of me. All I heard from my pilot was, I wonder why the F-16s are flying by. Right. So, long story short, I almost went back in because I kept on getting notifications from the Special Forces wanting me to come in and try out and join them. But I had 5 kids. So I'm like, I can't, that's not fair to them. So I decided to go back to school, went back to school at an older age. And then that's when I stumbled on this guy, Michael Lane, talking about space elevators. And I thought it was an intriguing concept. So then I reached out to him, interned with him, learned a bit about the industry when I was out there in Seattle, interning with the original space elevator for the Earth base back in 2006. And then he offered me a job, went to work for him in business development. And then about a year later, everything just went kind of wonky with the economy and everything fell apart. We all had to go get jobs that we didn't want to do because this was more exciting, but we didn't want to eat soup all our lives. So then I just kind of worked in corporate America, did some sales, did some stuff there, and then wound up working in a bank, went back to school, got my MBA with a concentration in finance. And when I left the bank, my kids were grown. I wanted to go back to what I was doing. I've always kept my hand in the cookie jar in the space industry and reached out to Michael. He said, I might have something for you. So we talked about it. He introduced me to the podcast, The Unknown Quantity, that I became a producer for, and asked me if I wanted to take over Better Futures and help bring that forward. And I said, yeah. And along the way, it's been a bit of a try. It's a good learning experience, but then also I learned how to develop a way to see the industry and map it where you can track what's going on. That's one of the things I'm done with Better Futures. Now we do have some proprietary stuff that we use in house, but it's very simple stuff. I'm not that brilliant of a guy. I'm not that clever really. So I use everybody else. I'm a derivative. I'm a derivative of everything else. So, but I can put it together and make it look nice. Let's put it that way.
You're being modest, but you're more clever than you give yourself credit. John, let's go ahead and bring you on.
Hi.
Brief intro. Who are you? What are you doing? What's your role here?
Jonathan Connell. I'm doing the engineering here. So it's operations, what goes where, how we're going to do things, and undertaking the very early simulations of how it all works and how it all doesn't work at the same time. My background is I'm an EE originally. And I started off in England working in electronics factories, which kept closing down because it was the 80s. So one way or another, I ended up in America, in New York, and I fell in love with the country. And I've really been here ever since for 35 years now. And there was no space industry in England in the early 80s when I was there. We closed our space program down in the late 50s. We had some satellites, and I did work on one. I worked on a down system it was British Telecom was running the satellites then, and it worked on electronics filters for that. But there was really no opportunities for aerospace until I got to America, and it's always been my goal. And I ended up luckily working via Robotics, and now with some wonderful companies you can see on my LinkedIn profile. I get to work in space again. It's my first love, and it's the best place to be an engineer. And there's room for new ideas still. We haven't got to the top of the stack of patents and innovation, and that's really exciting for me. So that's why I get up in the morning, the new stuff.
Awesome. Love that. I'm going to bring in our two contractors. We have a third one going to be joining us later after 6 o'clock. Joe, why don't you start us off, and we'll see more of you towards the end of the show. But go ahead.
All right, thanks. Appreciate that. So yeah, I'm Joe Luttrell. I run a company called Cube, and we build micro miniature satellites. And one of the things that LiftPort is doing here, I mean, Michael and I have been talking. I don't know how long we known each other, off and on,
Years.
Passing each other in the dark, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I took on the task of building a miniaturized version of a test rig for the various components for the space elevator. And we did an initial study. It looked like it was plausible, and then we built out an actual unit. And that's where my specialty is. If you give me a problem, I'll find a solution. I'm a jack of all trades, master of absolutely nothing. I've built satellites, I've built rockets, I've built buildings, I've stood on the steel beams of an 8-story skyscraper because that was my job at the time. I've been deep underground in sewers and in massive caverns that are man-made, sitting underneath DC, New York City, New Jersey, cities, everything. Just seen a little of everything and try and bring that to the table.
Love it. Thanks a lot. And Wes, again, we're going to see Wes in later on this evening as well. But just as an intro, what's your role here?
My name's Wes Ferris. I'm coming from the property rights side. My claim to fame is I claimed ownership of the 3 stars of Orion's belt in the early 2000s. And this was kind of a joke at first, but as time went on, the concept of property rights at outer space and getting the confirmation that this concept is not in violation of any of the space treaties became more and more important. I've done about 7 test claims in 4 different countries over the past 15 years, just to ensure that the red tape that has been cut remains cut. I've wormed my way into the United Nations Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space as just a guy. And now you start to see more private entities getting permanent observer status there. I met Sean about a year ago at the NSS ISDC conference, and where I was doing a speech on property rights there too. So I guess you could take a wild guess as to where I come in. Property rights in this project are going to become really important, and I'm here to see that the red tape that's already been cut remains cut for different aspects of this project.
Love it, love it. I want to point out each one of you folks were kind of a little self-deprecating. I think you're all rock stars, so you guys can be as humble as you want. I know that you're good at what you do, so I'm grateful. All right,
I nearly was a rock star, Michael, just so you know. So
right,
I was in a band that was nearly famous in the 80s.
Right, yeah.
And I did play with I was in a band as well, and my boss was in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Yep. Rock stars among us. Believe it or not, we're already 5 minutes overdue because we all went long on our intros. I've been at this for 25 years building elevators. This is LiftPort's 5th attempt at building space elevators, so hopefully the 5th time's a charm. I'm going to skip my bio because I figure if you're watching this, you probably already know a little bit about me, and I'm in the absence of keeping us on schedule, I'm just going to skip that. I want to talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna have Wes and Joe drop off the call here. We'll see you guys in a bit. And now I'm going to just kind of move on with the regular scheduled program. Some of our stakeholders have been asking us about revenues, and I wanted to be really clear about that. We are a logistics company. We are an infrastructure company. And while I 100% am committed to revenues, evaluating us based on revenues at the stage that we're at is it's misleading. It's misleading. If you're building a toll bridge, you don't ask for revenues before the bridge is built. You have to build the damn bridge before you can start charging tolls. Now, that said, we do have a subsidiary within LiftPort Group to focus on media development, and Sean has been working on that for about a little over a year now. And that side of the business has been doing what it's supposed to be doing. We've sent out several proposals in the last couple of weeks since our last show. We sent 3 to a sovereign nation. I'm not going to name that one yet unless it turns into something interesting. I'll know they've scheduled a meeting for middle June, so I should know something by the time we do our next update. We have a very large space advocacy organization that has asked us for some proposals. We've submitted them. They like what they see. We submitted for a 5-year, very ambitious plan. They pushed back with let's have a pilot test, a lower stakes test. And so I just talked to them about 3 hours ago. We've got a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. So neither of my team know that. So that's new news for them since the last time we talked. So I'm pretty happy about that. I was a little worried because I thought that project was dead. I thought it was dead on arrival. Turns out the woman was just having a very busy week, and there was nothing about our proposal she didn't like. She likes everything about it. She's trying to push it forward. But the week got away from her. So it was 10 days. So I was worried, but she was like, I'm sorry, I was busy. That's it. So that's it. That's
right.
So that's in motion. And I submitted a different proposal to another media group that I really can't say very much about because it'll be obvious if I say too much. So 3 proposals to a sovereign nation, 1 proposal to a large space advocacy group, and 1 proposal to somebody you would know, but I'm not going to say who yet. So 5 proposals in the last 3 weeks is a lot. So fingers crossed about that. And then the other thing that people have been asking me about a lot lately is What about NASA, NOAA, Department of Defense, Department of War, National Space, National Science Foundation? To be really clear and blunt about that, we are not submitting proposals to those organizations right now. We are too small a team. We will not win those proposals. And honestly, they are just a time sink that we don't have time to put into because we're actually trying to build something. And the choice was made unanimously not to mess with that right now. That said, I'm 100% sure that we will do that, and we will have dedicated people on that team that focus on that kind of business development capture. But it's just not a priority right now. So that's all I'm gonna say about revenues right now. Just it's on my mind. It's pretty high priority, but it's not the highest priority. Fast forward to trying to look at the time here. Good, I captured a little bit of time. Uh, this last week and next week are pretty interesting. I've got an interview with Project Tomorrow. I'm going to share a link to them. When I can find the link. So these folks interviewed me a couple days ago. Their interviews get typically 100,000 views, so pretty happy about that. I know that they are cutting and splicing and making my story pretty and interesting, and I'm excited to see what they cut. What they present, because it was almost a 2.5-hour interview, and I said some batshit crazy stuff on this interview, which was pretty fun. But I don't know what they're going to show, so I can't really tell you what they're going to do. But these folks have got 62,000 people in their subscriber channel, so that's pretty helpful to us. Their show or their each segment, each interview gets about 100,000 views, so pretty happy to be included into this community. Next, Dr. Annette, I don't know how to pronounce this, Tovenen. She has a PhD in space tourism. And yes, you can be a PhD in space tourism. She's got us scheduled for an interview next week. She's already published 2 books on space tourism. She is a traveling lecturer. That's her whole job, is to go from place to place to place all over Europe talking about this new industry. Sean and I have had some long conversations about the usefulness of tourism in this industry. Sean and I have been kind of borderline skeptics. She's all in, and she's like, this is the only industry that actually is an industry that's going to go into space. So I'm curious to see where she goes. She's fascinated by our project. I'm fascinated by what she's doing. She sent me pictures from Crete this morning because that's where she's lecturing now. So good for her. Tomorrow, we're doing a show on the unknown quantity. That's Sean and Tom Olson's show about the intersection of money and space. And we're going to be doing a pitch. We're going to be doing a live pitch with a critique. The Center for Space Commerce and Finance that sponsors the show have held dozens of business plan competitions. They've given out $400,000 in prizes. We're not eligible for that, so don't get your hopes up. But we are going to start doing pitches, and so I have volunteered to be the guinea pig for the first pitch critique. I had an event scheduled for next week to go to Las Vegas for a robotics event. That has been postponed. I believe it's going to happen in July. I'm unsure about that, but I am sure that I'm going to Washington, D.C. at early June for the International Space Development Conference. So that's what I got for Reach. And look at that, we're almost back on time, on schedule. I just want to do a shout out to Sean for a second. Here are our, whoops. Here's our channel. In the last 90 days, we have gotten 51,000 views on our YouTube channel. So Sean made some changes to what he was doing delivery wise. To put that in perspective, our channel has 500,000 lifetime views. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Our channel has 500,000 lifetime views, and we've gotten slightly less than 10% in the last 90 days. So shout out for Sean. He's kind of been kicking ass. So appreciate that. And then where is our channel? Here is, well, I'll show you our new LiftPort website in a moment, but interesting stats here. In just the last 90 days, it's only been, this new website's only been up since January, but it wasn't live for a while. We've gotten pretty close to 4,000 visitors, 3,700 visitors. More than half have come from China. Does anybody think that's interesting? I think that's very interesting. So keep that in mind, that, you know, this is a global project and other people around the world are paying attention to us. I'm reminding everybody we have 874 days to hit our target of October 4th, 2028. So that's first lift, and we are currently on track for that. The only way we stay on track for that is if we raise capital the way that we have to on the cycle that we're aiming for. So I blasted through a bunch of stuff. John and Sean, do you have anything you want to add? Question, topic? What do you want? Do you want to say something there?
But I picked
No, I just go ahead, John.
delay, so just give me what that is, and then comment.
Say again, John? You're having a delay?
Say something to me, please.
Okay. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, I was getting.
I want to talk about. You're getting what?
Yeah, I was.
I hear you loud and clear. Jason is pretty vocal in the chat. Jason, are you?
No, we just.
Hey, Charles. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. You know, I pointed out that China is looking at our website almost 2 to 1, more than 2 to 1 compared to folks in America. Push to talk. Thanks, Jason. Not helpful. So I wanted to take a look at the federal policies that are in place regarding my file. Is my file up? Nope, it is not. Hold on. In the last many years, there's been a lot of development around space policy. And I know that that's not everybody's favorite topic, but I promise you, we cannot build this thing that we want to build without it. So we're gonna take 5 minutes and just 5 minutes to bore y'all to death around policy. Um, I put together a quick document earlier today, but I wanted to look at this framework that we have. And I'm just going to quote the robot. We've talked about it before. We've got a bespoke set of AI tools that are being developed for us. I call ours Alexandria. So I was asking, so I fed a bunch of files into to Alex, and she came up with this. And I'm just going to read it verbatim. Across both Trump administrations, and I intentionally, by the way, I didn't skip Biden and I didn't skip Obama, but certainly the big gorilla in the room right now is the Trump administration. So I did want to focus on it. I'll remind everybody that the beginnings of Space Force started under the Obama administration and were maintained during the Biden administration, but it's the Trump administration that is the through line in the commercial space sector for the last several years. So I'm just going to read their Alex's report here, just this little piece. Across both Trump administrations, U.S. space policy has been remarkably consistent. Treat space, especially the Earth-Moon system, as a strategic domain where America must lead commercially and militarily. The directives coming out of those years retargeted us to the moon, deregulated commercial space, created the Space Force, and explicitly endorsed using and defending space resources. Biden didn't reverse that. He's been building on it. LiftPort fits directly into that trajectory. We're not asking the government to change course. We're building the cisLunar infrastructure their own policies already assume. And so we go through this kind of step by step. During the first administration, there was the National Space Policy, a comprehensive directive that consolidates prior guidance and commits the U.S. to leadership in exploration, commercial development, and space security, explicitly referencing the key directives and executive orders below, space policy directives. So there are several space policy directives. I think streamlining regulations and commercial use of space is super important. And then we move into the second administration, operationalizing space superiority. And this document didn't pull up the National Defense Strategy that came out in December, but it also is super important for where we are. It does not explicitly talk about the Lagrange point, but you could put the Lagrange point into their document and it makes a hell of a lot more sense. So exploration and lunar economic development, return Americans to the moon by 2028. This 2028 number is coming up all over the place. We use it at LiftPort. Blue Origin is using it. SpaceX is using it. Most of the CLIPS programs are using it. The Artemis program is using it. So everywhere you look, it's very politically motivated. That's the election year, right? So we understand why it's there, but it's there for a reason. And that's all I'm going to talk about for this. If folks want to dig in deeper to the space policy piece of it, I think it's really important. I think I don't think we're going to succeed with our project if we don't have a very thorough understanding of this. Okay, let us switch gears here. Let's talk about money. Jason, thanks for your feedback. I appreciate that. We're not really doing a lot of feedback on the show on this one, but I do appreciate that you gave us the all clear on the audio. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, let's talk about money, Sean. Couple
My favorite
days
subject.
for the last month, just to set the stage, we've been talking nonstop about capital raises and valuations and who are we and if we're going to really raise money. And remember, 874 days. The only way to hit that is to have the money in fast enough to get the engineering done, right? So the money has to come before the engineering does. So given that background, what do you want to talk about valuations?
Well, with what we're doing, I had a question was asked about what you think we're value at right now. And off the top of my head, it's at around 10 million. Of course, some people push back, namely you. And I said, well, let me go dig into it. So I pulled up a couple of, I just did a quick off the cuff valuation, but I did pull up some of them I remember that had AI find me a couple more. And I ran the test, and 10 million is spot on. Pretty much is middle, maybe a little bit under, but it's pretty much middle of the road. 10 to 12 million is where we're at as far as valuation. And I ran 4 valuations that are very common in the industry. And we sit at the 10 to 12 million mark perfectly. And so let me explain how that breakdown is. All right, you have the intellectual property of the talent, which is me, John, Michael, even some of the people are assisting us with the legal and stuff like that. And then you have the probability, what's the prospect going forward? We have we have our research that we've already done that has pre-IP. It's not IP yet, but it's pre-IP. That's the value. So these things all add up. And every one of the tests I ran, they do them a little bit different methodologies, but they came to around about the same amount. And so let me share I got a quick rundown of some of that real quick. Let me share my screen. No, not that one. See if I can do it this way. Because it's actually a document and I would have to upload it.
Okay.
Anyway, so I can, if you give me a second, I'll read off just a couple of it right here. So, all right, there's the Berkus method, which has us at roughly about 10 million. So the total, and this you got to remember is part of the project. The goal is to be at L1. We have to be at L1. That's a premium. All this that we've done is without the premium. All this I've done was without the premium. They know it's there, but they're based it off without the premium. That premium changes everything.
It does.
So everybody who's listened to us, keep that in mind. So this is just our value as basically a startup. It is $10 million. So the Berkus method, you can look it up. It's roughly about, it's about 10 million, between 7.5 million and 10 million. So that puts it at 8. But then it makes a note that this does not include the premium. Let's see here. The scorecard method. Now, the scorecard method starts off with a baseline of 2 to 5 million. That's a range. And then it adds multiples to it. And when we got through with the calculation, let me see here, it puts us at roughly 11.3 million.
That was one of the higher ones, right? Scorecard?
No, there's one that's even higher.
One's a little higher than that. Okay.
Yeah. The replacement cost asset-based valuation. So it has the accumulated research pre-IP, the recruiting equivalent financial professional, which is me, the engineer, the lawyers, time to market advantage, years, because we have been doing this for a while. Once we do the IP filing protection, especially the number. The one thing I do want to point out is that all this was also had the caveat that we do have a test coming up in November, national launch test. So that plays a factor into it. So just want to keep that in mind. And it has us at, this is the absolute floor at 9.2 million. before any premium for uniqueness of the L1 concept, market timing, or option value. And finally, market comparables. Look at Rocket Lab, Astrobotics, Orbit Fab, cisLunar Industries, Momentus. They're all pre-revenue, 10 to 15 million, 10 million, 8 to 12 million, 5 to 10 million, 15 million. My ask is 10 million, which is squarely within the range of what we would expect at this stage. So all these things together, evaluation 10 million. Yeah, I did it off the real trick was is that I knew what my value was, knew what John's, I knew what yours, and knew what the lawyers were. Rule of thumb in small businesses that you double it and then you add 10%. So that's where the started, just to give you a number. And then when you push back, I said, all right, I got you, buddy. We'll just do some research on this. So, and it started to come up, that way. The breakdown's pretty much the same.
The one that I pushed back. So I'll tell you, everybody, I was trying to come up with a valuation, and I had this at a range of between $7 and $12 million. And I was on the low side because I was focusing on the replacement value, right? If you went to Google, if you went to SpaceX, if you went to Rocket Lab, and you're like Intuitive Machines, and you're like, okay, we're gonna put 10 or 15 smart people in a room, lock them together for 45 days, feed them pizza, and then let them come up with the results. How easy or how hard would it be to replace and replicate what we have done so far? And that is probably the biggest concern that I have, trying to be grounded about where we are. And I think I'm concerned that it would be relatively easy to replace us and what we've accomplished so far. And that gives us the lowest valuation. So that was the floor.
Yep.
And then Sean, you pushed back with Michael, that's stupid. So give us the Michael, that's stupid response.
Well, number one, the market's going to pay you for what they think you're worth. And what the market's showing when you do comparables is around the 10 million. That's one of the arguments. The other argument is that they are not going to, I honestly don't believe they're going to take a chance on doing this unless we make more noise. You see what I'm saying? They're not going to be interested in what we're doing until we're already deeper in what we're doing, because proof and concept.
Right.
Once we start doing testing, and I made my opinion clear before we did the show. Once we get to L1, all bets are off.
Right. Absolutely.
Revenue is like a weird question to ask in a startup in aerospace too. Look at a company like Stoke. You just burn money for 5 years, sometimes for 10 years, but it's then you make money with the thing that you built. So
yeah, $850 million in the last 2 years that they've raised, and they're not trying to generate revenue yet. Like, it's not a part of their business model. So it's weird for us to be focused on revenue the way that nobody else in our industry is.
Well, you know, this whole thing, the valuation started because you had went to talk to somebody and they gave you a bunch of pushback, and you briefed us on what it was. And I'm like, that's not right, as far as the revenue and then as far as the valuation. And I started digging again. And so, I'm one of those people, I have a gut feeling that I'm right, but when I get pushed back, I'm going to make sure you understand that I'm right.
Right.
we can make guesses about that because we know our mass transfer ratio, how much we can move in a month either way. So you could put a dollar value on that, and you could compare that to the cost of using propulsion, and it's tiny compared to it. So we would be winning from the point of view of dollar per kilogram both ways by a mile.
Yeah, and this is going to be, not only is it going to be just moving cargo, there's multiple revenue streams that's going to happen from there.
Right.
And that's something that, it's not just simply we receive cargo, send it down, and if something comes back, we send it back. No, there's more that goes on to it. L1, we have a great sensing of both the moon and Earth. We can see stuff that most people wouldn't be able to see it if they were up close. So, I mean, look, at L1, you're basically going to be the air traffic controller of cislunar space.
Exactly right.
I like to think of it as it's the mid-19th century. We're building the transcontinental highway across America. And to quote a TV show, it's not the thing, it's the thing that you do with the thing that matters.
Right. I love that. I love that so much. I'm gonna respond to Jason, even though a moment ago on the chat I'm like, well, we're not really responding to the chat, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. So I think Jason's comment is really appreciated. So he says that an astronaut's time is valued at 130,000 US dollars per hour of usage. I would put you at the equivalent of a national lab. Well, I'm not sure that we qualify at that level, but I do think that there's going to be a day when we do, right? And we are going to have a crew on site, on station at both the Lagrange site and our LiftPort station, and also at Greenwich station down on the ground of the moon. So I hope that we do, in fact, get to that kind of valuation. All right. I'm gonna switch gears for a second. Do either of you want to? We've got a few more minutes. Either of you want to talk about valuation a little bit more? I'm going to share the conversation I had with our advisor a minute ago.
Okay. In the back of my mind, we're capped at 10 million right now. As far as wherever the path we decide, we're capped at 10 million until we hit our milestone and start growing.
We can justify what we're saying quite well, and most people use tarot cards to come up with their valuation.
Did you say tarot cards? Yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
So and the VCs are interested in what's it going to be worth in a year or two's time. So these numbers are right. We can stand behind them. It's a valid number. And we're totally irreplaceable, by the way.
So how this conversation happened, how it started in the first place was, we threw down the gauntlet and said, we're going to raise capital in the next 90 days. And we're about 20 days into that 90 days. So we're putting a lot of effort into it. I had a talk with one of our advisors, and he's a pretty smart guy who's been through a lot. He's been through five capital raises. 5 different companies that each had capital raises. He's had some successes. He's had some failures. He's currently in a success. And so we had almost a 90-minute call just digging in on this one topic. And at first, it was just going around in circles. We couldn't really come up with an answer that satisfied anybody. But then it started making some sense. Couple things. I told him about that 7 to 12 million valuation number. He came back with a number that, let's just say, I pushed back on hard. I'm like, I wouldn't even accept a number that low because I don't think it's real. Keeping in mind that this guy set the bar this time last year. So a year ago, he valued us at 3.5 million, not quite 4 million. I'm like, all right, cool. That's where it was before John was an active part of the team, before Sean took on this role on the team, before any of the lawyer stuff started showing up, before we committed a satellite with Luttrell. Before we had done anything, it was mostly just me, mostly just making plans to make a plan. And even then, he valued us at 3.5 million. Well, then fast forward, we actually have a plan. We actually are executing on that plan. We don't have blueprints yet. Blueprints are expensive. We don't have blueprints yet, but we have plans to get to blueprints. We have AI partners and new models being built specifically around us and for us. And so he came back with a number in the 5s and 6 millions, and I'm like, no. I was a hard no. It was like I shut down that conversation. I wouldn't even consider that as a valuation. And I pushed back and said, look, we are bigger than we were. We've done more than we had done before. So no, I wouldn't consider that. And then that's when that part of the conversation came up. He was pushing for revenues, and I didn't have it at my fingertips to push back and say, you wouldn't ask a toll booth company to have revenues yet. So I didn't have that one at my fingertips, so I didn't respond to it maybe the way I should have. But keeping in mind, we are going to do some revenue stuff. That's part of our announcement at the end of this at the end of the show today. So that conversation was just circling and circling and circling around valuations until we kind of got to this eureka moment that we shouldn't do a valuation right now. We should not publicize a valuation right now because it will hurt us. It will hurt us. So we've been talking for a while that we're trying to raise $20 million off of phase A, 30 million for phase B, and 300 million for phase C. We talked about that in the show last month, but that's digital development in A, hardware testing for what we learned in B, and if A and B work, then we move straight ahead to construction, and that's 300 million in phase C. So the longer we don't put a price on ourselves, the better off we are. And I thought that was actually really wise counsel. So that's our official position. We're not doing that. We are raising $20 million starting now. There are steps along the way. We are going to issue what's called a SAFE document, a simple agreement for future equity. I want to say as clearly as possible, this call is not a solicitation for our equity. We're not doing it on this call. No how can you be a part of our investment stack because of this call. All right. I hope that is as clear as possible. But that said, that is what we're doing. And we are actively engaging with accredited investors to hit these numbers. Phase A, 20 million, phase B, another 30 million, phase C, another 300 million, total of 350. So we are engaging in that. We have had very strong conversations with one of the biggest banks in the world, and they have verbally, with a hell of a lot of caveats, committed $50 million if we raise the first $50 million. And there's another bank that is very credentialed in the space sector that is committing 1 million if we get the first 4 million. So we love those folks, and we're doing what we can to get them on board. But none of that is checks in the bank yet. So we're trying to do our valuations as fairly and honestly as we can, and the SAFE is the plan. Okay. Any comments to that, y'all? I feel like I've beat that to death. I was going to move on, but we actually are a little ahead of schedule. Did you guys say anything about that?
SAFE is the way I've seen it done before. That's a normal route. And yeah, we're doing it right.
Yeah, and it fits us.
It's safe for everyone. The investors understand what they're getting, and we know when they're going to give it to us. So it's good.
The SAFE document is the Y Combinator de facto standard that is been used in tens of thousands of transactions. What I really like about it is you don't have to price yourself at this stage. You wait until your, mythical $100 million valuation, and then it really does make sense for the witch doctors and voodoo to and tarot cards. Sorry, I forgot tarot cards to evaluate how much a company is worth. But until then,
they talk about it because if you've got staff that are working for points, and that normally happens in a startup, you casually talk. The president casually talks about evaluation and what the shares could be worth after if they take their options and after the next round. Blah, blah,
right.
blah. So it's conversational, but not real.
So valuations work like an LLM on AI. They use probabilities. And it's pretty much the way it goes. It works really good for a little bit, and then it drifts.
Right, then it drifts. Right. All right. So I'm gonna kill that conversation. Let's talk more about law and policy, and I'm gonna bring up. All right. So Wes is on the call. Sean, if you could reach out to Dr. Bat and tell him we're going to bring him on soonish, that would be great. We don't need him right now, but I don't think he's even available until 6 o'clock. So,
okay, what you want me to reach him out on?
Just the link that you sent him earlier, Dr. Jason Bat.
Hold on.
Okay. Tell him it's probably going to be closer to. I'll put Wes in front if he's running late. So we've got some time. I just want to give him a heads up that between 6 and 6:20 or so. All right, let's talk about lawyers for a second. I'll tell you, this is not my favorite topic. I like lawyers. I don't have any lawyer jokes to say about them. A year ago, I was asked about what does the Seattle ecosystem need that we don't have, and I was the only person in the room that says lawyers. We need more space lawyers. So I believe in space lawyers. I think they're good for us, but they're not. It's not my favorite topic to work on. So I'm just going to blast through some of this stuff pretty quickly. We have identified and gotten paperwork from our IP attorney. We think we have a lot of stuff to do with an IP attorney. The rule of thumb is, one patent's worth $1 million to your valuation. So we just spent 20 minutes talking about valuation, and the easiest thing we can do to increase our valuation is build a bunch of defensible patents. So that's definitely on our mind. And there's a great guy. He's I'm not going to name him because we don't have the paperwork signed yet, but we're very comfortable in who he is. We've talked to him for months. I've done all the vetting. I really like what I'm seeing, and it's just a matter of time. So that should be sorted out and solved by our next investor stakeholder call next month. But IP is a pretty goddamn big deal, and I want to stress that. So do you guys want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it's true. I know a merchant banker who is in acquisitions, and they generally, if it's a utility patent and it's a good one, and they generally allow $1 million per patent. And because this is new ground, no one's walked through this particular snow before, there's a bunch of patents which just rear up and show themselves to you. And we're going to get those filed, and they're to do with how we actually do this. They've got applications elsewhere, but there's a lot of cool stuff we'll file IP on in the first year of the business, no doubt about it.
We did not pursue a patent portfolio during the first version of LiftPort for a lot of reasons, mostly because we were just too busy and it didn't matter that much to us. Absolutely the wrong approach. My mistake was the wrong approach. So we're definitely flipping the script on this one to make sure that we've got our IP stuff locked up as fast as we can. Sean, you want to say anything else to that?
Yeah, because even when you, so that got Bushi in the post IP, and of course that's more tea leaves for the witch doctors to look at whenever it comes time for evaluation. There's value in patent.
That's gonna be the signature line of this show. Tea leaves for the witch doctor to evaluate. Nice, excellent, but also true. All right, cool. All right, the next one. So, this one was harder to decide. So here's what I did for numbers 2 and 3. There's the corporate attorney group, and then the capital raising attorney group, and they couldn't be more different. They couldn't be more different. One team has over 1,200 attorneys, not support staff, just 1,200 attorneys. They are a top 100 billings attorney in the U.S. So they are a giant firm with a lot of capabilities. And honestly, I thought we would get lost in an organization like that. I was not enthusiastic about reaching out to them. I mean, they reached out to us. Let's call it what it is. I mean, both of these all three of these law firms have sought us out. So that's kind of fun, actually, to kind of be courted like that. But I thought maybe we would get lost in the shuffle of such a large firm. And I had a really candid conversation. I'm like, well, to the woman who courted us, I said, we're a kingmaker organization that if we succeed, we bring a lot of people with us to succeed. And she didn't understand what I meant by that. I'm like, well, if we're going to raise $350 million, it's a very safe bet we're going to spend 10 to 15 million on lawyers. So you would be the person who brought us in, and you would be responsible for this, and that makes you a partner. And she had such a fun grin on her face. She was trying to rein it in, and she's like, well, that is billings is one element of when you're being considered for partner. And I'm like, oh, that's such a lawyer thing to say. She's like, good.
That was going through my head the whole time you were talking. I was like, yeah, they have an incentive.
Right. Yeah. So that was good. I really liked the interaction, and I do have a commitment from them that she will bust her ass to kind of make this offering work. The other side of it, totally different. Smaller firm, only a couple dozen lawyers, Wall Street focused, capital raise focused. That's kind of all they do. So when we start dealing with ITAR, when we start dealing with FAA, FCC compliance requirements, they can't do it. The folks in New York cannot do that job, but the other folks can. So that's why we're starting to switch between good old ITAR. Exactly, Joe, exactly. So I was really kind of vacillating between pick one attorney versus the other, one team versus the other. And I realized at some point that distinction was stupid and a waste of my time. So we're not doing that. We're going to pick them both, and we're going to use them for what they're good at. The final two things is Washington State status. I learned a couple days ago, about a week and a half ago, that we're out of compliance with Washington State. So that's just a chore that has to get done. I thought it was going to get done today. It definitely is not getting done today. Sean, did you see that email?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's going to be a couple weeks before we get that. So there's a Gordian knot that needs to be split apart and figured out. So it's happening. It's not where I'd like it to be. I'm a little frustrated. the three of us vacillated on whether or not to create an entirely new company or resurrect the old company, because the old company does have history and legacy, but we didn't want a muddy capitalization table. That's like the most important thing when you're raising capital. Your cap table has to be clear. And so we were really concerned about that. Turns out that's probably not a problem. So I just got to sort it out with Washington State, get it sorted. But so that's it. Those are the 5 pieces. We're going to stick with our schedule and bring on Jason, Dr. Jason Batt. And perfect timing. Are you ready?
Hey, how is everybody?
Hey, great. Great.
You all can hear me? It's good.
Yes, loud and clear. Loud and clear. I would like you to give a little bit about your background. We're going to talk about data rooms, story-driven examples, and we're also going to talk about the moon, elevators, and papers, right? So those are the kind of topics.
Absolutely.
We've got only about 10 minutes, so we want to get through this briefly. But background first. Who are you?
Yeah, I can be super fast. So I've been in the space industry coming on 15 years. I originally got involved through the interstellar angle. I am not an engineer. I am not a data scientist. I am actually a mythologist. That's what my PhD is in mythological studies. But I primarily went after that because spending time with space companies, a lot of startups, I realized that the one thing that everyone needed more than anything else was how to tell their story better. And you've got incredible ideas, brilliant. We are going to change this, and then yet could not figure out why are other people not getting excited? Why don't they share our passion? And so I specifically went after a degree in mythology with a focus on Joseph Campbell as my theoretician. Went to the school that he put down. I'm actually on staff with the Joseph Campbell Foundation. And, you know, I would probably say I'm the one person that's the expert on Campbell's fascination with space, which a lot of people don't know that in the last few years of his life, his very last book is called The Inner Reaches of Outer Space. He got really excited about Arthur C. Clarke's 2001. Was even looking at publishing a magazine which had science fiction in it. So those last few years of my life, he really gravitated towards what space could do for us as a humanity.
Love that. No, I did not know about that in his book.
Yeah. And so through that, I've become really a consultant for a lot of different startups in both the space and the AI space. On my website, jbot.com, jbatt.com, I list myself as a technological philosopher because I can't figure out anything else that really works. It's either that or wizard, and I'm okay with either one of them.
I think you're a wizard. I've spent time with you. I definitely think you're a wizard.
I appreciate that.
You might have a couple of witch doctors on this call too.
Right.
Even better.
You missed it a few minutes ago. We were talking about valuations and words like tarot, voodoo, and tea leaves all came up during that conversation. All right, so I've got pulled up your example of your data room. So tell us about a data room. Why does it matter? Why is this one different from what we typically see?
Let me do this. Actually, if I could throw you out a different one, if I could throw you
Oh, sure. Yep.
No problem. I'll throw it in the private chat right here real fast.
Okay.
Try this one just because that other one is a fundraising, and I want to kind of go more towards the investor funding route. Here's one of the things that ended up happening. I started working with a lot of different startups, and they would end up having this really, and this one fits you guys, it's the moon. They would end up having these great pitch decks, and then it would come time for the data room. And the data room would often just be these Excel files and these contracts. And I mean, they would have everything they would need.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is you release that to an investor, and the investor no longer has you guiding them, probably in the most critical amount of data. When the investor is looking through the data room, what guides them? Yeah, you can click on the nice little colored buttons up there.
Oh, yeah.
This is an example site, how we
Yeah.
can theme it, how we can make it look, whatever the design is. And so I decided, you know what? We have a wonderful world now where we can plug things in. And so I basically created what I call Prism, which is story-driven data rooms. You basically overlay a pitch deck, but every single thing is touchable. So story is layer one.
Mhm.
Every single number can pop up to the next level down into the dashboard. Everything here will click one more and can go into a detail, and then you can go to the full financial model. There's the next one, and you go into the appendices. So everyone lets you get another layer down, but what never happens, the investor, the person going through the data room, never escapes the narrative, because
Right.
the why and the how sometimes are so loud, but they can get lost in the numbers. And this allows you to go through it. And so right now we're building this out for you guys. We do require a lot of like up top numbers and due diligence. And then, we do utilize AI for scanning and cleaning it up and stuff. The way I kind of look at it is it's really a lot of human work up top, AI in the middle, and a lot of human work at the end. And then we skin these. And yeah, I've got versions for both investors or people who are going after funding rounds, and then also for those who are doing fundraising for nonprofits. And so, and the goal is basically you can turn these on and then you can update them as you go, but it allows you to really control, the story behind the numbers. And it does put story front and center, which I think is always critical.
That's where your kind of mythology,
Yep.
story building, kind of pull it all together comes in. I love that. I was sold immediately, and we do have a complex story. We do. It's not an easy thing. It's not selling Kool-Aid on the front lawn. It's a complex thing that we're doing. So I did feel like it was worth the investment to go ahead and build out a deeper level of this, and for that I'm very grateful. So thank you. We've got we got about 10 more minutes, so that's good. Looking at our clock here, we're on good. We actually have 13 minutes, so I'm pretty happy about that. Let's talk about the moon. Let's talk about elevators. Let's talk about papers and advisory councils. Some of this stuff is still kind of a work in progress. But how'd you get involved with the moon? How'd you get involved with elevators? How'd you get involved with interstellar? Why are you a good person on our team? I know the answer, but I want you.
I will say, like most things in my life, complete accident. So the involvement in space, I've always been fascinated with space. I was obsessed with space from the early age. My dad took me out to see the Leonid meteor shower. The next day I bought Asimov's Foundation, and then I bought my first telescope.
Right.
But I took a different path. Was a high school teacher for a number of years, then became a COO of a private school. But the whole time I kept thinking, man, this is not where I want to be. And one night late, I was surfing around. This goes back 15 years ago. And I think it was on io9.com. io9 was like, check out what DARPA is doing. And DARPA had put out basically hey, we need a request for some proposals, presentations how can you keep a humanity-driven or humanity-focused, non-centralized space initiative going internationally for 100 years. They go, there's no really great model. And actually, there were several great models. And so I quickly, this was 10 o'clock at night, the deadline was midnight, I wrote 3 pages. And I sent it in, and I forgot about it. True story, I was 2 weeks later, I'm in the hospital. My third child, Ashlyn, had just been born. And I actually had her in my arms, and I got my phone rang. I picked it up, and it's this guy by the name of Paul. And Paul's like, hey, I'm from DARPA, and we're doing this really cool thing down in Florida called the 100-Year Starship Symposium. Would like to have you come down and speak. And I'm like, sure. I was thinking I'd get, I've done panel presentations. I'm going to be shoved inside room. No, I was on the main stage in front of 3,000 people and so many astronauts. And but that kind of was what took it off. The next year, Dr. Mae Jemison and Aliris Allman wrote the actual proposal that won the seed funding from DARPA. They launched 100-Year Starship. And the first thing they ran into is they're like, wow, we have all these presentations from the symposia. We don't have anyone that knows how to wrangle content. And I'm like, I got that. Right. So I ended up editing all of the symposia papers. I've done that now through 5 different events and conferences. I'm sitting at somewhere right now, roughly 3,000 pages of interstellar scholarship that I have personally hand edited.
I just want to like point that number out, y'all. This is going to come back to us when we do our announcement later at the end of the show. 3,000 files, all focused on the advanced math of interstellar development.
Yeah, and I worked in other places and other things, and I mean, there's and it was great. We had amazing people that first year. I mean, I was excited. I was geeking out. I'm sitting here editing papers by Stephen Baxter, and I mean, all these great. But one of the papers that got me was this one by a guy by the name of Peter Swan. And, I would go on and connect with Peter Swan later at multiple events and IACs and at Breakthrough Starshot and Breakthrough Listen. Peter Swan is, president of the Space Elevator Consortium. And I got geeked about space elevators. And ultimately, space elevators became real central to the interstellar narrative because if you're going to launch interstellar efforts, you've got to find better ways to get stuff out of the gravity well. Right. And then lunar elevators came onto that. I've been a massive proponent of the Lunar Village. I'm glad. I like the idea of Mars. I think Mars is a distraction right now. I think the moon is hands down the best bet for us truly fully inhabiting this solar system and then beyond. Yep. I think if we do not put our effort into the moon, we are going to regret it. And right now we're at this wonderful moment where we can do it. People are excited. People want to see people living on the moon, period.
They do, yeah.
And a lunar elevator makes perfect sense because what that does is that activates the resources of the moon, and it activates that ability to go out and inhabit the rest of the solar system. Right. It's just getting people to realize that one key technology piece is the linchpin to uplift the whole damn system. Yeah.
Oh, you had me at elevators, buddy.
So I worked with 100-Year Starship for years. Past that, a couple other things I did. My partner in a lot of this has been Aliris Allman. We launched a thing called Deep Space Predictive Research Group, which really our focus there. We realized after all this is, man, you're sending people into deep space and onto the moon, and yet we're expecting everybody to be like the right stuff astronauts, and now you're sending up people that are mechanics and engineers. How do you make sure that people welded into a Buick shipped across the U.S. technically, with all the doors closed, are not going to murder each other?
Right.
And so we began working on behavioral technologies and have made some great partnerships with, French Space Agency and others with a lot of our different behavioral intervention and technologies through that. So there's a few other things I've been doing. Project Lodestar is a space ethics white paper group, kind of a think tank, primarily founded between me, Aliris, and the Cal Poly AI ethics team. We decided to take their team and apply these guys are the ones who know AI ethics.
Yeah.
Dr. Patrick Lynn and Wes Rist and Keith Abney. And we also created a space ethics white paper and focus on that as well. Let's see what. I'm associate editor of the Space Philosophy Journal and editor-in-chief of the Beyond Space Policy and Law Review. So there's that.
I didn't know about that group out of Cal Poly. I know some of the folks that are really into Dr. Andrews down in Arizona State U. Yeah, great. If you needed connections,
Yeah, ASU has been great. I've done stuff with them, did economics groups. Yeah, quite a few things. Yeah, ASU is amazing.
Right on.
I do some stuff with ASU. Daniel Innocenti is an architect, a space architect, and he's a professor there.
I know the name. I haven't met him, but I know the name. Yeah.
We don't have him on the team yet, but we're fishing. We're trying to get him on the team. Yeah. Do you, John, Sean, you guys got any questions for Dr. Bat?
No, but he brought up a point about, how can you going to put a bunch of people in something essentially a Buick and send them off into the dark and expect, hopefully we don't want to kill each other. And I've argued about that case for a couple months now. I even wrote a small article about maybe developing a guild. I mentioned about how, you have the guys out in the desert for the Mars Society doing their analog. I don't like that location because you can still get out and get away. Take it where there's some real skin in the game, like the South Pole.
Yeah.
Where you make a mistake, there's a cost. And that's the point. What I used to do, I don't think you were here when I mentioned it, is I used to do long-range reconnaissance. And we had skin in the game. And you had to get along as a team. You had you had to be buddy-buddy. You had, figure out how to work together as a team. And back then in the military, it was blunt force trauma to get you to get work right. There might be better ways to do it, but still the risk is still really real. And I don't think a lot of people understand when you get 4 people who come from a different background, it works good for a while. And then all of a sudden you get irritable, especially when you have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I think studies in I think it was in NASA Tech Briefs where they suggest long-term happily married couples would be good to send on. And certainly in the case of my marriage, it would work really well. We would love that a couple of years.
There'll be a couple of deaths in that too.
No, there absolutely would.
Right.
You'd probably have a few people that claim they were happily married, and but no, I think
get swingers and send them
well, we won't get into that, but that will happen. I mean, it's the question of not when or if, it'll be when. But I think people don't realize I'm very supportive of the analog community here. I think they do a fabulous job. I think the one thing I always give as a caveat is we cannot truly produce a legitimate analog because of the penalties and the risk the risk factor here on Earth. And then even if we do Antarctica, right now some of these analogs work well when you're talking about from here to the moon. But once we start talking deep space, out past the lunar environment, we do not have a legitimate analog capable. We don't know what's going to happen to the human condition. We don't even know what's going to happen to the human mind when it's separated from the polarities of up, down with gravity, sun, moon, all these binaries that define us on an evolutionary level, and we remove those.
Yeah, the constants.
They're constants and they're gone. So those all need to be considerations. Yeah.
So these are the kind of things when we bring you on as a technical advisor, what we're looking for from all over, and we're anticipating hundreds of technical advisors to really pull this off. We have to have expertise from across the whole, I'm going to say, galaxy of knowledge for this team. And so we're really kind of categorizing folks into a couple different groups. There's, the folks are here all the time, right? 4 hours a day as an advisor. They just want to be a part of the regular goings on of the team. 4 hours a week is still pretty extreme for a lot of people, right? 4 hours a month and 4 hours a quarter. That's what we're starting to put together with real contracts. It says, this person is on the team. They're on the website. They're on the letterhead. They're contributing their brain power. They're contributing their files to our knowledge base. So for that, I'm really excited to have you on the team, sir. I think this is going to be great. So
I appreciate it. I love this. Like I said, when you said Lunar Elevator, I'm like, absolutely, it's
Absolutely.
the technology that has to happen.
Right
Period.
on.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing your evening with us. We really
Glad to.
appreciate it. Looking forward to it. And we've got more to share. So data
Absolutely.
rooms first, right?
Yep.
Let's go raise some money. Data rooms first. The rest of the stuff will follow. Thanks a lot, sir.
Awesome. Thank you all. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. You're welcome to stick around in the background if you like.
I will.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's bring on another topic that is space and policy. Let's bring on Wes Fairs as a contractor. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Hey. Well, you said you didn't want to put the audience through the boring legal aspects, so I'll start with a more boring one, but it's going to be awesome. It's a history lesson.
It's boring, Wes. This stuff is brilliant and entertaining, and it makes me smile. So
good. So it's going to be a cool history lesson.
All right, good.
It's the history of property rights beyond national borders in international treaties. There's a point to all this, but space property rights will come out of this. So the first one is Antarctica. I'm glad our last guest mentioned Antarctica. Well, toward the end of World War II, as part of the closing treaty for that, it was decided that Antarctica shouldn't be a realm for war. And there was already 7 standing claims prior to that by several different countries to Antarctica. So the Antarctic Treaty basically froze those claims, and it also added a line saying, "No new claims, period, shall be recognized." That wasn't done under the United Nations, but it was independently done. So we have one treaty that says no new claims because we don't want any war there. 1967, Outer Space Treaty comes about. The U.S. and Soviet Union, in the heart of the space race, so one wouldn't annex the moon. Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty says that there can't be any national appropriation. What that means is let's not take the borders of nations into outer space. Right. This was a time where no private entity was considered. Because can you imagine if like here you have this United Nations treaty where the Soviet Union and the U.S. are brought on board. Let's throw private property rights in the middle of, like it just didn't happen. The concept of private sector participation was as alien as the recently declassified. Yes, it was alien. And so private, like it's. Why would you even throw that in there? And so to even claim that was a part of it, as I'll get into, that's been done before by trying to say, well, technically, if you're a nation, then and you live there, you're a private. Some mental gymnastics has been just taking place to where that would be a violation of the Outer Space Treaty for a private citizen or entity to claim property rights, but really. It wasn't included to begin with. So that argument's been done and over and done with. Now, part of my motivation for proceeding and getting confirmation that property rights by private citizens can happen, it comes with 2 different treaties in late 70s. One's the law of the sea for deep sea, I should say law of the seabed, law of the ocean floor, and the other is the Moon Treaty. They're 2 cousin treaties. Yeah. They both try to set up a supranational regime over the ocean floor beyond national borders, and the Moon Treaty says the solar system outside of Earth. And both of them expand on the national. They say no nation can claim this, but also step over the bounds and say no private citizen, right. no national or juridical person can have any kind of property rights. The law of the sea worked. The Moon Treaty did not. The law of the sea sets up this supranational jurisdiction where you have to pay it if you want any kind of property rights. The Moon Treaty kind of almost died on the vine. So that's the history of where we're at today. And so the big reason to, if it was just the Outer Space Treaty, and I say I want to execute a property claim as a natural person, and I get the appropriate government to admit that I'm right. Like, shouldn't I stop there? My only motivation is because there's an antithesis to this that it keeps on going. The attempt to even include natural persons in a treaty that didn't ask them ask the permission, and B, set up something to govern them. That's the only motivation I need. So that's that's the why I continue to begin with.
I have a quick question, Wes. So you're talking about an individual. What about corporations? Because they're recognized here in the States as an individual entity. I mean, as an individual person.
Well, fortunately, these two treaties, Law of the Sea and the Moon Treaty, try to exclude natural and juridical persons, where the original Outer Space Treaty does not.
Yeah.
Am I still here?
Yeah. So we've got about 5 minutes more. Let's talk about this white paper that you've been kind of putting together, and maybe some of the plan behind it. What does it say? What are you trying to accomplish with this white paper? What's it say, and what are you trying to do with it?
Well, so as new laws get written out, and as the attempts to do so go forward, I'd like to execute this white paper in such a way that it's hard to disagree with. That the way that you put forth a claim to a celestial body, the way you've done it, does not inherently violate the Outer Space Treaty. So, I'd like to say I'm not claiming territorial sovereignty. I'm not claiming that a nation has to have my back on this, other than to say this, since it is not under the Law of the Sea, reference the language there. Since it is not under the Moon Treaty, reference the language there. The way I've executed this, by getting confirmation that it's not a violation, then I'd like to get that peer to peer. See that there's no problem with this. Not just governments, not just but just it's the other space lawyers that I'm going for this, and also to say that, okay, there's further laws that could be written that haven't been written yet, but at this time, it's
well, this could also influence those laws too.
What's that, Sean?
So this can also influence that too.
We're hoping so, right? Wes has gotten 3 different secretaries of state signing 5 different secretaries of state signing different documents on these claims. There's a giant hole in, I'm going to call it, the real estate market of space.
Yep.
And until we get these things sorted out, it's not even as clear-cut as the Wild Wild West. People talk about it's the Wild Wild West of space. Wild Wild West had really clear-cut rules. If you put a barbed wire fence out, if you planted a cherry tree, that was your property, right? We don't have that up there. I'm a big fan of space lawyers, and the hope is that we'll get a bunch of folks to sign off on this white paper that then leads to a generalized agreement. I'm not saying the Artemis Accords. So the Artemis Accords are a generalized agreement that we all 67 nations have agreed to generally this set of policies. We would like to have a white paper that has some mass adoption from influential people in the space sector. And I'm excited about what you're doing there, sir.
Right.
I do want to switch gears a little bit to the Technical Advisory Council.
We just mentioned that kind of.
We did, yeah. And I want to kind of point out some of the things that we're asking our advisors, which is, the papers that we're getting from you and from other people. It's your choice. You don't have to just you're not giving me unrestricted access to your hard drive. You're gonna pick and choose the documents that you're gonna share with us. And then also there's secondary elements of this is a widely shared document, or this is an ITAR restricted document, or this is a partners only document. So that's going into the technical advisory council. I forgot to mention it when we were talking to Jason. I wanted to make sure that we got it in here. We're starting to run out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to say on the white paper or the property rights component?
I'm good. Unless there's any questions, that's where I'm at.
Okay, all right. John, Sean, any questions before we wrap it? We only have 30 minutes left.
No, I'm pretty good.
It's a beautiful plan. I can see him implementing, and it's very exciting to see it emerging out of the book. It's great.
Love it. All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Wes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
I'll
Wes.
I'll stay on board.
Yeah, feel free to stick around. All right, we are moving into the hardware half hour. We're going to try and get through this pretty quick because in our last 10 minutes, we do have an announcement that we're going to make. Let's bring on John. John's here. Why don't we talk about how LC works, digital twin, and lunar orbits? Go.
Okay, so let's talk about how it works. One of the things I've noticed is you tell people you're working on a lunar elevator, and they say, "Oh, that's so cool." And then about 5 minutes later, they say, and they have that question. So the other thing everyone says is, "I thought Earth elevators didn't work," and they're right. They don't work.
Right.
So Earth, okay,
Right.
there's Earth, and let's put the moon way on the other side of the screen.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, so now let's look at the moon here. We're going to be right about there on the moon,
Right.
and we have an anchor point and a tether that runs up to the L1 point. All two body systems have an L1 point. It's I'd like to think of it as a gravity well, but it isn't. It's a gravity saddle. It's where the 1/r squareds match. If you go one way, you get blown in that way. One way, you get blown in the other. And then following the L1 point, again, tethered to the lunar surface, we go way over towards Earth. We're thinking about 150,000 miles towards Earth. And we're going to put
kilometers.
Kilometers, I'm sorry, yeah. We're going to put a large mass at the end of it. So one of the fun games to play is this stretch from here to L1, which is 56,000 kilometers, I believe. So I've got a climber. It's an electric climber, and there's a tether at the bottom, and the climber starts climbing up the rope. Why doesn't the L1 point, the spacecraft we placed at the L1 point, why doesn't that come down as I'm climbing? Why does the climber go up? Why doesn't the L1 point come down? And that's actually a very difficult question to work out, but it's conservation of momentum. So there's a lot more mass at the L1 point than there is in the mass you're moving.
Right.
So you can make it wobble by climbing up. It'll wobble a little bit. Over a long period of time, it may even need station keeping, but it won't move. And it's also tethered again to a large weight over by Earth. So that's how they climb. And again, once you've gone up from the lunar surface to the L1 point, we transfer onto the L1 to Earth leg of the cable. And it's the same story. We're moving along that cable. The Earth is sucking in this case. You can power the system too. We have solar power, which will get it up to hundreds of kilometers an hour. But it's we will wobble the big weight, but it won't move very much. And some station keeping will be necessary in the long term. But so that's how it works. I remember when I started off in electronics factories in the early 80s, there was 1,000 women working in these factories doing electronics assembly, and the new interns they'd send them down to to the stores to ask for ridiculous things. And one of the things they were asked to get is a skyhook. I said, "Get me a skyhook. I need to put a ladder out in the middle of the."
Right.
Well, this literally is a skyhook. It's it's a skyhook that you can climb out. You don't want them ever sending you down for grease nuts because it gets ugly.
No. Let's talk about, we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's talk about digital twins and some of the stuff you learned about these lunar orbits recently.
Okay, so the goal, we use a lot of AI, and we're developing our own specialist AI to help put this together and to share with friends of the company. So we've developed a series of equations to express the position of anything and the masses, the forces on anything. So in any point along this cable, there are equations that will express the gravity and the forces from the driver and exactly what's going on, 1 or 2 moving on. It's a very complicated system of equations. It's simultaneous differential equations, which are imponderables, but we've put them together with AI, and we can look at all of these variables at the same time. It's an interesting question. If you look at, we use a polymer material as our tether, and it's 150,000 miles long. What's the speed of information along that cable? What speed does information move down there? Well, information moves at the speed of light. But if I knock that cable, bam, that sound, that impulse is going down that cable. How fast is it moving?
Right.
And the answer is it's moving at the speed of sound in that particular material, which is pretty damn high. But that's how long information takes to arrive at the other end. So you will get compression, expansion waves, possibly waves in the other axis, which will move down. And this all needs to be simulated. We have to understand the compression waves, which is the cable in tension being released. And we believe we will also get broadly sinusoidal, or we can Fourier analyze them in various axes. And one of the patents we're working on is, this is basically now an audio analysis, remember, which the software is well established. We can understand the spectral content of that oscillation we're seeing, and we can throw weight exactly tuned to correct that oscillation. And that's a patent. It's a pretty cool patent. So we will be able to keep it in line, and there's points along it. So we know that L1 is particularly useful for us, and also for launching missions out further in the solar system. Using our trusty AI, we've also noticed that L1 and L2 for the moon, there are no stable orbits between L1 and L2. But if you ask the question, are there fairly stable orbits that with a little bit of station keeping?
A little bit of like wiggle word, fairly stable is a different
ounces
answer.
of thrust, not hundreds of pounds of thrust. And there are halo orbits between each one where you can bounce backwards and forwards. There's a lot of stuff you can do, and this traverses the moon, of course, too. So that's useful for observation and broadcast and a million other things. But it's a very good parking lot too. So you need some navigation and some small thrusters, and you can bounce halo to halo or circular to circular between L1 and L2. It's very useful.
I want both of you to kind of chime in. We only have 2 minutes here, but I want you to tell a little bit about how you're using the AI tools and the beginnings of this digital twin. And I'm going to say something about that too. But Sean, you go first, and then John, and then I'm going to do it.
I'm sorry. I had to do something real quick. What was the question again?
Oh, I'll have John do it first then.
Okay.
How are you using the AIs at the earliest stages of our digital twin tools?
Well, I have the AI, and we've got some very special AIs that you, the public, haven't seen yet, which are tuned to do what we want. But I have the AI set up an equation for every part of that. So for each leg of the journey, and for every stress that's caused by a motor or a drive or a breakage or anything in the journey, we come up with equations. And the AI likes working in Python. It doesn't matter what it works in. So we can invoke Python equations for any given point. And it's got high granularity because we don't care about the calculations. We care about the result. So we'll say an object, a 500 kilogram load moves from 0 to 300 kilometers per hour over an hour. What are the stresses before and after the cable? And we can define that accurately.
And that is super hard to do. You cannot do that on a standard LLM from, Kmart. I said that on purpose, but.
And we're working on looking at we know that the cable will get sinusoidal oscillations in it, which we can correct with our system. There's no way to simulate that right now. The cable, from the point of view of engineering simulation world, is more like a fluid because it's vanishingly thin and exceptionally long. So it's more like a fluid, but it's a challenge to simulate. But we think we've created the digital twin that gives us good results by a lot of simultaneous Python work.
I would caution you to say we're at the very, very beginnings of that knowledge.
This is true.
Yeah. Sean, quickly, because I don't want to eat up Joe's time.
All right, real quick is what I'm using it for. Like with any enterprise, when you first start out, there's like 12 financial models that you need to keep track of. So I'm working with the LLMs. Most of the ones we talk to, they don't really have a specialty in that. It's particularly one that I'm interested in, but they're really keen on working on that. So I got to get working on that. But the idea is as we develop and figure out what parts we are going to need, we can go ahead and start pricing that out and start to build a real price tag on the development of the elevator. But because you can't just throw in there, I want to build a lunar space elevator. These are the components. Give me a price. It will give you an astronomical price. And then we got a budget we got to work with.
Right.
And so you have to go in, you have to fine tune as you go along. So it's better just as we make the discoveries, we can get a better handle on the price and try to make sure we're under that $350 million price tag that we've been chomping at.
We had to go on some spreadsheet equations, like 5 pages of it a few weeks ago. And he came back overnight with a beautiful display and sliders and just a wonderful graphic display of the situation with return on investment and mass throughput and cost of launch. And it's just wonderful. Similar to what we saw in the last interview. It's a wonderful thing.
Beautiful. I'm going to bring in Joe Luttrell here. I'm just going to say this. Alexandria mostly lives in our head right now. That's our AI tool. It starts with trying to understand the questions that we have, and we sometimes refer to that as the 1,000 questions database. And then it becomes a CRM where we're tracking the people who are working on the problems and tracking their results. And we call that MVA, minimum viable answer. We learn pieces. It's not a complete answer. It's kind of directionally correct. And then once we're confident in that level, then it starts moving into the CAD/CAM levels. And ultimately, once the thing is constructed, it also becomes a telemetry system where it's doing constant feedback to us. And that kind of answers some of the stuff that John just asked, like what's the rate of information from the bottom to the top, and how do we know that? So it's a complex system. It has barely scratched the surface of what I think Alexandria is going to become, but we're working on it. So, all right, let's bring in Joe. Sorry for the delay there, buddy. Appreciate your patience. And where's Joe? There's Joe. Hey.
Joe.
Hey, it's neat that you guys are talking about the AI stuff because we use AI here as well, only in a slightly different way. We use it as a process engineer check. So we're doing all the engineering, but it's like, okay, are we certain of what we are doing being the correct answer? And so we've put all of our data into this AI. He, he actually has his own name. He picked his own name. That's RJ. And RJ just does a sanity check whenever we're doing something.
Is
So
that like
that's
formal
what,
testing where you take all the inputs and all the outputs to all possible values? Yeah, that's great.
And we plug
Lovely.
that
That's
in and
great.
say, okay, are we violating any of our own rules? Are we violating any rules of nature? Because, it's great when
Typically,
AI
that's
gives you an answer.
insanely expensive on a chip, right? You can spend big
Yes,
money
it
getting
is.
it down, so it's great.
Yeah, so we just went ahead and built that because it makes it easy for us. So anyway, what we've been working on is continuing to develop the test prototype, and
Okay.
I'm going to try and drag this up here and put it on the screen so people can see it. But this is now assembled into the satellite completely.
Yay!
Don't know if you can see these,
Cool.
but the actual cable samples
Yeah.
are installed. Now, this is the
Excellent.
terrestrial version. We are going to be really pushing through to make certain that everything works. And then hopefully we'll integrate that into the actual flight version, which is already under construction. So it's build, test, build, test, build, test. That's the way we do things. So
happy about that.
I find it cheaper to bend metal than to run simulation. And that's simply because
and the world should
simulation
think
costs
that
me
way.
lots.
For that, that's
We
opposite
simulate
of
far
what
too
we're doing.
much. Bend metal
Well,
first,
let's
and then
see.
if you needed to go faster, then simulate.
Yeah, and well, I'm like SpaceX. SpaceX builds rockets. The SLS was on paper for how many decades? So I really am of that mindset. It's like let's bend metal, let's break a few things. Try not to lose fingers while we're doing it, and call it a day. So
don't do that.
We all lips to God's ears. That's the right way.
So
that's
we've got in the beginning of our conversation, we talked about valuations, and sending a satellite into the sky jumps our valuations by millions. So thanks, Joe. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But it is real, right? So when are we flying? Any updates from InnoSpace? Any updates on paperwork for InnoSpace and flying? Where are we at with that stuff?
So InnoSpace is still holding to a no earlier than November, which means sometime after November is all I can tell you. The paperwork with the FAA is now on files, and we're waiting on their response. And then after that, we have the ITU to worry about, and then we're good to fly. So the ITU bill comes due after we make orbit. So that will be an interesting one. It's not that bad, but overall, the total cost for like the FAA paperwork and the FCC paperwork runs somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. So we're right on track with that and moving forward.
Okay. All right. Great.
So we're doing everything we can to keep the costs down.
Okay. All right. I will tell people that I'm not going to go into the details of it, but we did talk to you about 2 other potential missions. We are not moving forward on those 2 other missions yet, ultimately because of price and capital, but we have already started ideating and imagining what those follow-on missions might look like. So for that,
and from a technical standpoint, we did look at those 2 missions. I know you sent me the one earlier today. I was like, okay, I'm just going to do some quick back of the napkin. Is it doable? Yes. You won't like the price tag.
No.
But it is doable. And that's the problem. I'd still believe in the cheaper, faster, better. Pick any 2, because you have to have constraints, and financial constraint is something to consider. And so you build
time and money. Those are the things we optimize for, right? That's why 874 days is not a mythical number. It is a time constrained number on purpose. So time is our first variable. Capital cash is the second one, and everything evolves out of those two. So,
Yep.
Okay. With so we're going to see you at ISDC. You're going to be presenting then.
Yep, I'm going to be
Okay.
presenting. Yeah, I'm actually going to bring some hardware with me because we're going to
Great.
show off some of the stuff we've been doing. With your permission, I'll go ahead and bring the prototype down. So
Absolutely.
people can see it.
That was the next thing. So yes, bring it. I'm excited about it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
All right, because we'll bring in some of the deployers and some satellites and talk about it all.
Excellent. Super excited about International Space Development Conference the first week of June. So it'll be fun. All right. Let's switch gears to the last minutes. Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
In our last 10 minutes, I want to talk about. Was I frozen? Am I still frozen?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. In our last 10 minutes, I want to talk about. I want to have Sean talk about economic development zones. John, you and I are going to talk about Stellar World and Off-World partnership, and then we're going to talk about the ION. All right. So, Sean, quickly, because we only have 9 minutes.
I'll make it brief.
Economic development zones. What's the story there?
So the idea was behind economic development zones is that, if we go to space and we get out there, and you know how government funding is, it can always reverse. And we want something repeatable. If you go there as a mission, that's a one-stop shop. You go there as an economy, that's a repeatable thing. So instead of focus on, we got to get there, we're going to deploy this, build this infrastructure, let's focus on developing the whole economic development zone. I wrote a piece about it, or actually wrote a series of articles about it for Better Futures. Focus on first on LEO, then it went to cisLunar, and then we went out to the asteroid belt. You can theoretically, basically what cisLunar is doing right now, if we develop it as an economic development zone, is setting the blueprints of how we will explore the rest of the solar system and beyond. Because we have to have a repeatable exchange of resources, so to speak. So if we go there, we have to have a purpose there, and there's also got to be a benefit back towards home planet, so to speak, or at least to a proxy that's going to home planet.
Yeah.
We're developing an economic system. It could be all, if you look at Mars, asteroid belt, theoretically, they could have their own economy going between them. Some would have an economy going to Earth. That's all fine, but you have to start with the idea that we're trying to make something that is repeatable. And so economic development zones is what we use in a lot of things around, cities or areas, and like rural communities have economic development zones. Cities have economic development zones. So this is the same principle. This is nothing new or alien. It's just a different framework to put your mind towards. All right, instead of let's just go and exploring, let's set this up where it's a permanent presence. Going to that, I know a lot of groups out there want to try to put 100 to 1,000 people in space regularly, which is an absolutely beautiful idea, but you're not going to do it just doing mission sets. You have to have an economic viability.
Right.
So that's what an economic development zone is. I do have if anybody's interested, reach out and I'll make sure you can see
put the link in the chat for your newsletter.
I will. I'm going to go look for it right now.
All right, John, what can you say about Stellar World and Off-World, and then I'm going to add to that.
Okay, well, Stellar World, looking at building, it's a visionary plan. It's very different to everyone else's. He's building underground. He's going 10 meters down, and he's building cavities which are 20 meters long and 10 meters wide. And he's putting high-end residences in them, and he's selling that to the market. He launched this at the symposium, and it's real. He's selling these spaces, and we want to get people living underground on the moon. It's safe, right? And the part of this is it's immune against attack and asteroid hits. It's a safe, warm, cozy place. And the whole point is it will be self-sustaining, water, food, and he wants 1,000 people living there by 2050, I think. So it's a significant investment. One of the things that strikes me about that is the scale of work to do that. And we're used to doing things like that. The city center in Vegas was one of the largest projects ever done on Earth. You need a lot of planning, and that's something that it takes a village to build a lunar base. You can't do it on your own. You can, but you need to be a nation state to do it. So a lot of people are going to have to come together to do the surveying and the trenching and the drilling and the excavation. And right now, if I've got a habitat and I want to bury it to protect against radiation, which many of the NASA designs do, I need a bulldozer or an earth mover to put dirt on top of that. If I want to get the spec for that, it's very difficult to do it. You have to have a lot of meetings. It'll take time. So our plan is to expedite that by approval and payment, so that people have access to these off-the-shelf components, to make them off-the-shelf components, so you can specify them on your project. And that way, the same as City Center was done, you just specify contractors and equipment, and you know the capabilities, the power requirements, and everything comes together a lot more simply, and don't develop it all yourself. So that's what's coming through this company.
Awesome. Love that. So take economic development zones writ large, like all the places we want to go, but the moon first. Take Stellar World with their 1,000-person ambition. And I will point out something that I know that a lot of people don't know. They probably have the financial wherewithal to pull this off. I'm not going to cite my sources, but I know things that are real. I believe they have the financial resources to pull this off. And I would not say that about very many organizations.
He told me he did too, and over drinks. So why not?
Yep. So what are we doing about that? How does that affect LiftPort? And with that, we're going to sign off here in a minute. But I just want to bait this a little and say we are building something called the Industrial Infrastructure Network. I'm going to put a link up in the chat and share it on the screen. So what is this thing? The Industrial Infrastructure Network is really about pulling together what I sometimes refer to as the Chamber of Commerce for the moon, where you share schematics and blueprints, you share plans, you share vision, you put out your asks and your offers, the things that you have available to other companies to purchase, and the things that you want to get from the network. And it is designed to be a membership program. It's expensive on purpose. So if you are a startup company that's really scratching to make ends meet, $1,000 a month does not fit for you. But if you're a well-funded company, then $1,000 to join this elite community, this hyper-specialized community, is a real thing, and there are benefits to it. In order to qualify, you either have to have a team of at least 5 people or at least 250,000 in revenues. So we talked about contracts and SBIR and STTRs and NASA and NOAA and DARPA and all those folks earlier today. One contract would get you in. Or you need to have $1 million in capital or assets. And that's a little fuzzy, right? It's $1 million in a checking account, maybe not. But $1 million in assets, that's somewhat achievable. So we're being very specific about who can join. But the idea here is that the folks that are really aiming for industrial applications in space should all band together share data, share tools, share resources for a price, right? Nobody's asking anybody to give anything away here, but this community exists. It is starting. I would love to get people to send messages to us. If you want to apply, there's an application. We'd love to interview folks, and we want to be a part of this. We want you to be a part of this. So if this is something that you're interested in, I think this is really important. I think this seeds the entire cislunar econosphere, and we would love to have folks be a part of this with us.
Yeah, the money helps us control the data, right? We stay within ITAR when ITAR applies.
Absolutely.
Not everyone gets your data, but you can approve who gets your data.
Yeah.
And the idea is we create, it's a forced lever that makes all of us a lot more effective than working individually.
And we have great partnerships and alliances already. You already know Joe Luttrell at Cube. He is a part of it. Wes at Space Rights is a part of it. Our two AI tools that we're public about, and the third one that we're a little quieter about, they are all bespoke AI tools that are really gearing towards the space sector, and they are building special tools for us specifically for space, for the moon. Sean's Better Futures company is a part of it. The Stellar World folks want to be a part of it. We have a whole bunch more announcements that we'll be making over time. But this community is definitely a community that is trying to build something real. So we'd love to
we have a pile of documents that have never seen the light of the internet before, too.
Right.
Space Studies Institute has reams of documents, very important documents, very important math that's just not out there until we put it on our AI.
We are targeting 100,000 files that have never been trained by any AI. This will be this will be an environment that is built for us to build something amazing. So with that, I'm gonna call it. I appreciate everybody that's been here, all of the audience, Jason and Charles. Really appreciate y'all. Wes and Jason and Joe, appreciate y'all for being a part of this. We couldn't do this stuff without you, and especially our team, John and Sean. This goes nowhere without your help. So let's go build something amazing. All right.
And check out the network.
Right on. Yes, please check out the network. Oh, I didn't put the link in. Holy cow. Let me do the network before I close off. Oh my God.
We're going to get
Here's the
trouble
link to the network. Join it. Ask questions. Get involved. All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Later.